You ever feel like you're running on a treadmill, working harder and harder, but the scenery never really changes? That the goalposts for just being financially okay keep getting pushed further down the field? Well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to unpack Munawar Abadullah's pretty provocative theory on why, even though we live in this age of amazing progress, so many working people feel completely stuck. Let's dive in. And this quote from Abadullah really kicks things off with a powerful image, doesn't it? A carousel. It just perfectly captures that feeling. You're moving for sure. You're spinning like crazy, but you're not actually going anywhere. This is the big problem we're looking at today. That feeling of being trapped on a ride you can't seem to get off of. Okay, so to really get why today feels so off, the author says we need a baseline. We need to rewind. So let's take a quick trip back in time to 1955 and see what the financial world looked like for the average worker, at least according to the data he's using. So first things first, let's talk money. In 1955, the median annual salary for a guy was $3,400. Now, I know that number sounds almost impossibly small to us today, but just hang on, it's only one half of the story. Here's the other crucial piece of the puzzle. What could you buy with that money? Well, back then, the median price for a house in the US was just under 12 grand. So, what happens when we put those two numbers together? And when you put them side by side like this, well, you can just see how different things were. The whole idea of owning a home just felt way, way more in reach. But let's make that relationship even more clear. And this is the magic number right here. According to the author's math, a house cost just 3.5 times what a worker made in a year. Seriously, burn that number into your brain. 3.5x. It's going to be the benchmark for everything else we talk about. All right, so if 1955 was this kind of baseline, what happened? When did the rules change? Well, Abdullah points to one single pivotal year that he says completely flipped the economic game board upside down, and that year was 1971. See, before 1971, the US dollar was on the gold standard. That meant every single dollar was backed by a real physical amount of gold sitting in a vault somewhere. There was a hard limit. You couldn't just fire up the printing presses and create money out of thin air. But in 1971, that all changed. That link to gold, it was cut. The author's whole point is that this one decision completely changed what money is. Okay, so we've got our 1955 baseline. We've got the author's big turning point in 1971. So now let's hit the fast forward button and jump right into today to see what he says are the consequences of that huge shift. Which leads us to the big question, right? How does that picture look for us right now? What happened to that all-important ratio of how much you make versus how much it costs to buy a house? And wow, here's the reality check. Remember that 3.5x ratio from 1955? Today, that number has more than doubled to over 7 times your annual salary. So think about it. According to this one metric, the mountain you have to climb to own a home is literally twice as steep as it used to be. But the author says the story gets even wilder when you look at raw purchasing power. He also measures what your salary can buy in gold. Back in 1955, an average salary could get you almost 97 ounces of gold. Fast forward to today, and that same salary gets you just over 14 ounces. According to Abadullah, this is proof of a massive, devastating loss in the actual value of our work. Okay, so the numbers don't lie. We can see what happened. But the billion-dollar question is why? This next part is where the author lays out his theory, and he calls it the Great Heist. So the core of his whole argument is this idea he calls the Great Productivity Lie. It's actually pretty simple. Since the 70s, technology has made us all incredibly productive. We're creating way more value for our employers than ever before. But our paychecks haven't budged. So where did all that extra wealth go? Well, according to Abadullah, it sure didn't go back to the people doing the work. He argues it got rerouted, siphoned off into things like corporate stock buybacks to boost share prices, huge executive bonuses, crazy financial speculation, a nonstop war economy, and, of course, the massive consolidation of wealth by a handful of tech giants. And you know how we're always told that a little bit of inflation, say 2%, is actually a good, healthy thing for the economy? Well, Abadullah has a very different take. He says it's not stability, it's robbery. A quiet way to drain the value from the money you've worked so hard to save. Here's how he claims it works, step by step. First, governments spend and rack up a ton of debt. Then, to pay for that debt, They just create more money. This makes every dollar you have worth a little bit less, which eats away at the savings of normal people. But, he argues, the super rich, who own hard assets like property and stocks, actually see their wealth go up. He calls it a hidden tax on the working class. All right, so let's pull all these threads together. Let's connect all this economic theory and these big abstract numbers back to, well, how it actually feels to be alive today. Back to that frustration. And this is where the author's conclusion gets really intense. He basically says, look, the system isn't broken. This economic anxiety we all feel isn't an accident. In his view, the system is working perfectly, doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is to funnel wealth to the very top. And what's the human cost of all this? He says it's created what some call the precariat, a massive, growing class of people in precarious jobs. Gig workers, contractors, freelancers, who have zero job security, no benefits, and this constant feeling of instability. They're the ones stuck on that carousel we talked about at the very start. So we'll leave you with the author's final and pretty challenging question. He puts it all back on the nature of money itself. And he asks, until we go back to a system where money is tied to something real, something tangible, are we just doomed to keep spinning on this carousel forever? It definitely gives you a lot to think about.